Pig, 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 pig. Pig, pig, come on. That's right, come on boys, girls, it's. Come on, pig, 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 come on. That's right, come on. Come on, pig. Pigs don't sweat, so they're constantly looking for, a way to cool down a little bit. That's just their nature. They're just drawn to that like you and I are to meatloaf and ice cream.
When I was in college, my roommate was from Pakistan, and he says, George, he says, Americans fear only one thing: inconvenience.
We just want. We want all of this food, but we don't want to think about who's growing it, what farmers have to go through, whether they're making money. We don't worry about chemical residue on the food that's laying in your plate. As long as it tastes good, as long as it first starts with, man, does it look good?
The raising of chickens now is just totally different. Everything back when I was growing up and when my mother started the farm raising chickens, it was a lot of more manual labor, there were less chickens, the chickens grew for longer. The type of feed that was given to them, they did not grow as fast. So there's a total different operation.
We're controlling the temperature in the air in the houses. We're controlling the litter that they're on. Is that the last one? This one is. My goodness. The health of the bird, because of the environment they're in, is so much better than it used to be.
The changes that have been made on this farm in approximately 10 years as far as raising
About
chickens.
the last 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Great changes.
I don't believe that there's anything unhealthy in these chickens just because they grow as fast as they do. I think it's just these chickens are genetically bred to do this. And it's not steroids, they just eat.
Yeah, it's just
They're
good.
comfortable and they eat.
It's just good quality feed that they have nutritionists mix for what they want.
Do you know what's in the mix or no?
Well, they put some antibiotics in it just for the safety's sake on the health of the chickens.
Each house has 27,600 or 110,400 chickens for the summer. And in wintertime, it's 29,400, 118,006.
It's all about maximum short-run productive efficiency. like a factory process. We find something that works well, and then we continue to use it because it works so well. And then, as we say, we begin to apply that same kind of paradigm, the paradigm of industrialization, specialization, standardization, economies of scale. We begin to apply it to everything. And it doesn't work on everything.
When people say the industrial food system is unsustainable, we throw around that word without really thinking through, well, what does that really mean? Well, it really means it can't go on this way. Monocultures are very dangerous things.
A monoculture is a lot of the same species grown together without variation. Nature doesn't have monocultures. When you grow too much of the same thing, you end up with too many of the pests of that thing. The only reason you can grow vast amounts of the exact same species of animal in close confinement is because you use antibiotics to keep them alive. Monocultures of corn and soy and rice and cotton, same issue. It takes an immense amount of fertilizer and pesticide to keep that crop healthy. Because nature doesn't like monocultures. Sooner or later, she will destroy them.
I'm sure that crop duster is out spraying for either bean leaf beetles or Asian soybean aphids that have they're like new pests, or at least the quantities of those bugs have gotten so bad now that people have to spray for the darn things, which we never used to have to do. You can see here on my soybeans, you can see how these leaves, they never used to be like that. There's no way. But as long as you're going to rely on just a couple crops and you plant them year after year after year, you know, you're creating an environment where certain weeds are going to want to become prevalent, and certain bugs are going to want to just take over, you know, and eat your crop up. And then the herbicides and the pesticides that you use year after year are going to create certain resistance to them too. And that's what everybody's worried about now. And so you don't know whether it's worth spraying or not. I mean, I always try to err on the side of not spraying. And last year, I think I probably, you know, economically would have been better off spraying. I'm a conventional farmer. Most of the chemicals and technology that conventional agriculture uses is aimed at eliminating risk so that you can produce the most, quote, efficiently. It's not necessarily good for the environment, it's not good for the farmers, it's not good for our rural communities or consumers, but that's the way the system works. Produce the most to survive. In Iowa, just about everywhere you look, there'll be the two crops, corn and soybeans. There's really hardly any difference from one field to the next. It's all pretty much just for industrial use. They use it for animal feed, they use it for soybean oil, they use it for making ethanol and corn sweeteners and all kinds of highly processed foods. Most of these farms, when I started farming, had livestock on them. People were raising hogs, and people had some cattle, and even people, when I was a kid, had chickens. These big corporations industrialized livestock production. That really took the livestock off of the family farm and put them in these big factories. You see, there's 2,400 pigs in those buildings, and I don't remember exactly, but a hog obviously produces as much waste as one human being, and if not, probably a lot more. And so there you've got the same thing as a city of 2,400 people. And this is actually a small one. How do you like that smell? You're talking ammonia and hydrogen sulfide.
Once you concentrate animals in these animal cities that we call factory farms or feedlots, you have all sorts of problems. Not only miserable animals, but microbes like E. coli 0157H7, which is a feedlot bacteria, and it regularly kills people. And you have a huge sanitation problem. You have all these manure lagoons full of real toxic waste. I mean, this isn't the kind of manure you can spray in a farm field. It's just too concentrated, and it's got too many pharmaceuticals in it. It's full of hormones, it's full of pesticides. You've created a pollution problem where you didn't have one, because if you keep animals on farms, their manure is a blessing. You can use it to grow other crops. You can close the nutrient cycle between, the animals can eat the crop wastes, the parts of the plants you can't sell, and they produce fertility for your fields. So the animals feed the plants, and the plants feed the animals. It's a wonderful system. We took this solution, plants and animals working together, and we divided it neatly into two problems. One is this pollution problem on the feedlot, where the manure becomes a pollutant instead of a blessing. And then the other is on the farms, we have a fertility crisis, because there are no animals left. So we have to buy synthetic fertilizer.
You know, we can tip the balance of nature to a certain extent, but when we try to tip it too far, it creates problems. And I think that's what we've done in the food system, that's what we've done in our overall economy, that's what we've done in our society. We just got so obsessed with productivity, having more cheap stuff, more and more cheap stuff, and we're facing the inevitable negative consequences.
Health officials are urging residents not to eat watermelons, thought tainted with pesticides, have become ill in California, Oregon, and Washington.
The first reported case of mad cow disease in the U.S. in Washington State.
5,000 animals. Part of the E. coli outbreak
Have already been distributed to school lunch
There's a growing fear of an invisible enemy.
And so it's simply a matter of it being time to shift to a different kind of paradigm, a different worldview, a different vision for the future.
Oh, it doesn't get much better than this. When the dew's sparkling on the grass, that early morning sun comes up and you're looking into it, and that dew just is like diamonds. You hear the birds singing. It's a very soothing morning, I think. Good morning, birdies. Good morning. How's everybody today? Good morning, ladies. Come on. part of our responsibility as stewards of the earth is to respect the design of nature. If you look at nature and you study herbivores, the American bison, caribou, dick, there are things that every one of them exhibits. One is they're always moving. The second thing is that they never eat meat. For 40 years, due to the industrialization and the centralization of production and processing, we've been promoting feeding dead cows to cows. And of course, everybody knows what we have now: bovine spongiform encephalopathy, commonly known as mad cow. It's helpful to say it once in a while, though, so you sound educated. We didn't feed dead cows to cows, not because we were against the industrial food system or anything like that. It was just because an herbivore doesn't eat dead cows. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can take you right down the road just a mile to our neighbor farms who are feeding dead chickens and chicken manure to their cows. It's considered cheap feed, and they put enough molasses and sweetener in it. I mean, you could if you put enough ketchup on something, you can probably get it down. So you can just go down. Here's the point: you can go down the line: avian flu, mad cow, Salmonella, Pfiesteria, Campylobacter, E. coli. Just go down the line, and every single one of these things is nature speaking to us today, screaming to our industrialized culture, saying, enough. How about squash? And tomatoes and peppers and those little tiny round tomatoes. Have you been eating those too? They're yummy. Those little round tomatoes. Huh? Did you eat some of those?
Yeah, tomato.
Yeah, tomato. Let's have a blessing and then we'll graze. Okay. Lord, thank you for such a gorgeous evening to enjoy your outdoors. Thank you for bringing us through the day safely and bringing us all back here together. Thank you for the wonderful meal and all the preparation, care, thinking, creativity that's gone into it. Thank you for providing for our needs, and continue to bless our time and our fellowship together. We pray in Christ's name.
You need the little saying that I crossed this for my mom that said, if you've come to see me, come anytime. If you've come to see my house, make an appointment.
Absolutely, I like that one.
Jacob's mother is such a cleanie that if the vacuum streaks disappear from the carpet, it's dirty and it's time to vacuum again.
Oh, yeah.
I remember as a very, very small child, we looked at farms and found this one, which was the cheapest, most eroded, worn out, junkus farm we could find. And that's what we bought. Now, early on in the first year, Dad had a lot of consultants in. And I remember he had both government agriculture experts and private agriculture experts. And the question was how to make a living on this farm. And every single one of them, their advice was plant corn, build silos, put in a feedlot, and graze the forest. Every single one of them. Dad had enough ecology understanding to understand that if you're committed to healing the land, then you do something different. If you look at nature as the template, and look at the pattern and say, how can we most closely approximate this? Let's treat the herbivore like an herbivore first, and then the other things will fall into place. You're not scared of a bunch of T-bone steaks, are you?
No.
All right.
Look him right in the eye.
Daniel, the twins are right over here on the other side of the river. Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. Come on, Dale. Come on. Remove the cows virtually every day from paddock to paddock. And what we're doing here is mimicking the natural herding instincts of herbivores in nature. They're moving on to fresh forage away from yesterday's excrement. It allows the area that they were in to revegetate. So you look at nature and say, all right, well, so we've got this herd of herbivores. How does nature sanitize behind them? I mean, before Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and Merck Pharmaceuticals, how do these herbivores stay, parasite-free and relatively healthy? And what you'd find are birds. Birds follow herbivores. The egret on the rhinoceros's nose. And so we followed the cows, about 3 days behind the cows, with the eggmobile. And then the chickens scratch through the cow patties, eat out the fly larvae. That provides their salary. From a spiritual standpoint, the chickens are not just something to lay eggs, but they are fellow workers here alongside us. They are with us. And so we honor and respect them to allow them to fully express their chickenness, and that gives them an honored part of the team to be workers and team players with us. It's the philosophy, how we view the animal. Why does a chicken have a beak and claws? It's not so you can cut the claws off and cut the beak off like the industry does. They have it in order to scratch and debug and find worms. The problem with industry is the value is faster, bigger, cheaper. And if feeding dead cows to cows makes them grow faster, we feed dead cows to cows. There are no boundaries to creativity. And we can actually create and invent things that we can't ecologically, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that we can't metabolize.
Growing up, my dad raised 7 children and very well on a 220-acre farm with 30 cows and 30 sows, and never had an off-farm job, and we lived well. But when I went to college, it was about production. How can you squeeze another pound of pork out of 2.3 pounds of feed, that type of thing. And when I came back from school, I think there was more of a push at my encouragement to make it more efficient, be able to push more pigs through a facility per year with less labor. And so, I'd say I got hung up on that. And you know what? It didn't work.
Within a couple of years after we put together a very intense operation, we were experiencing diseases, a lot of diseases. I spent half my day sometimes, injecting pigs, treating them for various respiratory and different types of diarrhea, and it was it wasn't a very pleasant lifestyle. During that time, almost 15 years ago, the boar hog stabbed me in the kneecap with his tusk one day. And, a tough farm boy that I was, I basically took off my rubber boot and poured the blood out, and I just went on about my duties. About 2 weeks later, my leg basically increased in about 50% of its size. It was throbbing. And that's when I went to the doctor. I contracted a strep infection. That was a mutated form of strep. They treated with first, standard types of treatments, penicillin, the tetracyclines, amoxicillin, erythromycin, and the list went on. And it did not phase my infection. And so finally, they didn't have much faith that I would even survive. They put me in the hospital and gave me an IV of a new generation drug that saved my life. And what I was actually doing on my farm was basically feed continual dosage of antibiotics just for growth rates or to ward off a low-grade infection. Because when your best resource people tell you that this is the magic drug to increase growth and efficiency, you adapt that. And it's very dangerous. You kill off the weak strain, whether it be strep or some sort of E. coli, and then the strong ones survive and they multiply and mutate and become even stronger. And so you create an antibiotic-resistant monster strain. I realized this whole thing about antibiotic resistance was so true. And I realized that, I'm propagating this. And I'm selling these hogs to my neighbors for breeding stock, and I'm selling this pork on the market. My conscience really kicked in and saying, I can't do this anymore. It's not right. So I went cold turkey. I exterminated my herd. These pigs were just born. They were born this morning. They're only here, they farrow in here in these pens, but you can see that they're not restricted. This is opposite for the conventional type of farrowing systems. Farrow means to give birth. It's kind of like a maternity ward. You may notice here too is that we do keep the tails on in confinement situations. It's a common practice to at least cut part of the tail off. They do that because when pigs are in close confined situations, they have a tendency to nip on each other's tails. These pigs have not received any antibiotics in this herd for 14 years now. But the fact is that we don't have sick hogs here. We don't treat hogs here because we don't have to. And by throwing my drugs away and eliminating my veterinarian bill, I saved over $14,000 my first year. And I contend that, when you concentrate a lot of biological organisms, whether it be rats, kids, or pigs, that you're going to have problems. This farm here currently has about 300 hogs. It's a thin concentration compared to some of these farms that have, 20,000 on the farm.
One of the complaints that we often hear about organic is it's wonderful. Sure, it's better for the land, it's better for the farmer, better for you, but you can't feed the world with it. We now know that that's just wrong. We have the science. We know the answer. And that is that medium-sized organic is far more productive than any sized industrial agriculture. We now actually, for the first time in the last 2 or 3 years, we actually have the studies, the data that definitely shows if you want to feed the world, don't be industrial agriculture. It turns out that all those inputs all the expensive machinery, all the pesticides, herbicides, not to mention the fertilizers. Make it unsustainable. In the last 10 years, we have had more than 100 million more tons of herbicide poured on our crops, in our croplands, polluting our streams, polluting our air, in our foods. Industrial agriculture has caused us to lose over 90% of our diversity. We've seen our soil depleting at 13 times the rate that can be replaced.
It's very seductive to hear that language, we need to feed the world. When people in industrial agriculture talk about feeding the world, they are talking about increasing the production of grain. And nobody is like stopping and saying, well, what are you using that grain for? Are you growing food? No, they're not growing food. Those are seeds for cattle feed, for a very unsustainable system of fattening cattle on feedlots. But guess what? Cattle shouldn't be eating grain. They're evolved to eat grass.
You've got red clover. You got fescue, orchard grass, fall panicum, dandelion. Some dandelion here. Here's some baby wild carrot. That's real good stuff. White clover down here. Chicory, some timothy in here. What we're really farming here is not animals. It's grass. If we take care of the grass will take care of the animal. You've got to understand that 70% of all the row crops in the United States, and of course the row crops account for the most of the genetic engineering, the petroleum use, the tillage, the erosion, and all the negative things in agriculture, that 70% of that is grown for multi-stomached herbivores that aren't ever supposed to eat that anyway. Only 30% goes to people, pigs, and poultry. So if we went to an herbivore, a grass-based herbivore agriculture for our cattle, suddenly 70% of that currently assaulted land could return to a mob-stocked herbivorous solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration fertilization program, and all the negatives in agriculture would come to a screeching halt. We're not talking about going back to Grandpa's farm. We're talking about marrying the best of the technology and the innovation that we have today, marrying that with the indigenous heritage wisdom of the chickenness of the chicken, the pigness of the pig, the cowness of the cow, the tomatoness of the tomato. We can raise everything we need without any of the industrial food system. This is techno-glitzy infrastructure here. These little stainless steel threads, this will keep out black bears, coyotes, raccoons, foxes, dogs, cats, and keep the birds in. Who would have thought 50 years ago that you could have that kind of fence and 160 feet of it would only weigh 12 pounds? The beauty of these prototypes is that they're size neutral. See, here's the infrastructure. We're not building a $500,000 building and hoping to pay for it 20 years down the road on the 10 millionth one. Where we're standing got grazed 2 or 3 times in the spring, then we made hay on it. Of course, each time it got grazed, the eggmobile came in behind them. Then we ran a big batch of turkeys through here, and then we grazed it again, and then we're running broilers on it, and then we're gonna make hay late on it, and then graze it again at wintertime. The point being that when you add all of those things up, suddenly you're getting not only the diversity of the multispeciation and all the different kinds of manures, but you're getting all these complementary income streams, so that instead of like the neighbor who just runs beef cows getting $150 an acre, we're getting over $3,000 an acre per year. I mean, it's incredible, the difference. And we haven't planted a seed or bought an ounce of chemical fertilizer in 50 years. That's what I say. Wow.
it is true that local and organic food costs more. It's worth more, too. When this dozen eggs costs $4 or $5, because these animals have been on pasture and it's full of omega-3 and it's full of, vitamin A, that those are not the same as those 79-cent battery cage eggs. And yeah, they're a white sphere, but they're completely different products. As we've industrialized our food, we've made it cheaper, but we've also diminished it nutritionally. According to the USDA's own numbers, if you look at fresh produce grown in 1950 and compare it nutritionally with fresh produce grown today, you will find that the amounts of key nutrients, minerals, vitamins, has diminished by 40%. The more you process food, the less nutritious it is. Food is at its most nutritious in its whole form, in its fresh form, but most of the supermarket is full of processed food from which all the nutrients have been expunged, basically. Cheap food is an illusion. There is no such thing as cheap food. The real cost of the food is paid somewhere. And if it isn't paid at the cash register, it's paid, it's charged to the environment, it's charged to the public purse in the form of subsidies, and it's charged to your health. You do get what you pay for, with food as with anything else. There are people, however, who can't afford it, and we need to basically level the playing field. Right now, we're heavily subsidizing every calorie of high fructose corn syrup and hydrogenated oil, which are the building blocks of processed food and the least healthy food we're eating. And we're not doing anything to subsidize or support the growing of healthy, fresh produce. Millions of Americans live in food deserts where you can't find fresh produce. You can only find processed food. You can find ramen noodles and you can't find an apple. People do want to eat this food. They just don't have access to it.
Okay, we're going to move forward, and some of our staff are going to kind of usher you guys along because we're going to be in tight confinement. Yeah, go this way. Have folks go this way. Hey, how you doing there, kid? Good. It's great to have you here. Hey. Good morning.
How
you dress appropriately, right? Okay, go down a little bit further. We got get some more folks in here. How's everybody this morning? All right. I'm Will Allen. I'm the director of Growing Power, and just wanted to welcome everybody. We've got people from all over the country doing a variety of different things, but it's really all about food and how we are going to try to change the existing food system to make it something that really works for everybody. That everybody has access to healthy, sustainable food. That we don't say only rich people can afford it. People come here, they want to know, how did you do that here? You know, did you make that happen on these 3 acres? How can we do that? We've got 3 acres. How can we do it? We grow about 150 different varieties of microgreens and salad greens. Graze as you go. Everything is edible here. Pay attention to all the use of vertical space. We try to use space as efficiently in these old greenhouses as possible.
There are 4,000 tilapia in this system. The biosolids, that's the waste from the fish, stays in the system. And the reason that we're able to get away with that is because we're pumping water out of the fish tank, releasing it here, and the roots of the plants take up that waste, just like a river. We don't remove the waste from a river or a pond or a stream. So all we've done here is recreate what is in the natural environment. Whether it's rural agriculture or urban agriculture in a sustainable way, you really have to grow healthy soil. So that's what we do. We're going to compost about 6 million pounds of food waste from the city of Milwaukee this year. And that food residue will turn into a high nutrient microbiological soil. We're starting to get a lot of waste from food wholesalers. They throw away thousands and thousands of pounds of food waste a week. We're only scratching the surface. We're only getting a very minute. When I talk about 1 million pounds of food waste, that's not a lot. We compost our food waste, and then we feed it to the worms, and this is what you get. The worms are in here breaking this down, creating wonderful bacteria, turning this stuff into black gold. And this is your base material for growing food.
Joe, get your hands in that.
Okay. Very cool. The worms are breaking down the waste.
If 70 people come, not all 70 people are going to become farmers. That's totally unrealistic. But they are going to learn about how to eat healthy, where their food comes from, how to support the system in some way. That's how you grow a movement.
So you guys can go over and dig around if you want and see what's in the bins. So. Okay, Lydia, you got to grease down and grab some worms now.
I think I used to eat a lot of garbage before growing power. I did. Will is real particular because he would talk about your food. I mean, when he used to have his food and we run down the street to you know who, and he would say, do you know what's in that? Do you know what that's doing to you? And we'd be like, shut up, because we're hungry right now. And you just gobble it down. But as time went on and he started bringing in the veggies, I started eating more veggies. I was not a vegetable eater. I have 2 children. They are not vegetable eaters. We eat more vegetables now than we ever did in our entire life. The free-range meats. His meats, oh my God, I used to tell him it was too fresh. I couldn't stand the taste of the chicken or the beef. The beef farmers would come down and bring steaks and cook them up for everybody. Come on, have a piece. They would even tell you the name of the cow that it came from, and I'd be like, I'm not eating that. That's just too fresh. My food don't have a name. Huh? My food has names now.
Oh, you got to have your greens, you know. You eat your greens, you'll grow up big like me, Mel. Guaranteed.
The earth is his passion. This place is his passion. And he always told me, you can't see the big picture. I didn't see any picture. I'm going to tell you this truth. There was no picture to be seen. This was a raggedy old farm in the heart of the city. He saw something that I could not see.
Everything that I know today I learned from my parents. You know, my parents come from a farming background, both sides of my family. My father was a sharecropper. And getting away from farming, going away to college, you know, you leave all that hard work behind. You say, man, I'm never going back to that stuff. You know, I'm gonna get me a good, you know, I'm gonna be a professional athlete. I'm gonna make lots of money, you know, kind of thing. So you never thought that I would be doing what I'm doing today at 18. And when I got over to Europe and started playing basketball, I had a chance to go out in the countryside, and there was something in my system, I guess. I said, you know, what they're doing is really important. The soil was so black, and The produce was so unbelievable that they were picking it. The animals were so healthy, and the way they took care of the land and everything. Something just clicked. I said, I got to be doing this. And so as soon as I got back, I just, you know, my wife's family had some land that wasn't being used, and I started growing stuff.
You guys find some nice worms in those? I don't know. You guys back that wheelbarrow out, go get another one. 2 loads and then worms. Well, you sound like a slave master.
For 10 years, I worked for Marcus Corporation, running the Kentucky Fried Chicken stores here in town. Then I went to Procter & Gamble in sales and sales technology until I bought this place in 1993. I use a lot of the things I learned in the corporate world to the work that I use today. And one of those things that I use is this idea of how to sell.
Compost tea is made from worm castings. And that concentrate is sprayed as a foliar feed like you would that chemical Miracle Grow. You get better results than Miracle Grow. It also acts as a insect repellent. You can never have enough beneficial microbial activity in the soil, so you can't overdose the plant. That comes from the worm castings. Okay?
Are you selling worms?
We don't sell worms, we give them away. You want worms, we'll give you worms. You have to convince me that you know how to take care of my babies. You know?
Okay. You have to teach me. You have to use antibiotics.
We don't use any chemicals on any animal, on anything here.
They get ill?
Nope, because of the beneficial bacteria. Yeah. We never had a disease problem. Okay, you guys, keep going.
I'm president of the National Family Farm Coalition, and we have a big diversity of types of farmers. We have small vegetable farmers, and we have ranchers. We have and people like me who just raise corn and soybeans, you know, for the military-industrial complex. And I'm a conventional farmer, although I don't use genetically modified crops. I drew the line there. But I think that we try to be a voice for what farmers know needs to be done to have our agricultural system make a whole lot of sense. Many farmers have, you know, done what they had to do to survive, and knowing it full well that it's not the best thing for themselves or for society. But you know, if they hadn't done what they did, they wouldn't be farmers anymore. So we try to represent all farmers. Farmers that are brave to creating new markets and producing food sustainably and organically. You know, we put them on a pedestal. We think they're just fantastic, but we also want to represent the farmers that are just hanging on there and that do have the ability to transition back to something that's more sane once we get the policy that's going to support a agriculture that's sustainable and supports family farms across the board. Farmers have huge expenses for seed, for fertilizer, for chemicals, for fuel for their equipment, for equipment costs, and for insurance, and interest on the money that they borrow to pay for all this stuff. And the price farmers get for our corn and soybeans is way below the production costs. And if it wasn't for the subsidy payments we get from the government, we'd all go broke.
We cut subsidy checks directly to farmers for every bushel of corn they can grow. That seems like a good deal for farmers, but in fact it isn't. Who it's a good thing for are the buyers of cheap corn, the food processors.
ADM and Cargill, very important players. No one's ever heard of them because they don't sell a lot of consumer products. But they have enormous power in agriculture because they're selling farmers seed, they're selling farmers the fertilizer, they're selling farmers pesticides. after the farmers have grown the corn and the soy, they're buying it from them at the elevator and then turning around and processing it into the high fructose corn syrup that becomes the soda, the ascorbic acid that's the food additive in all the fast food. And they've got feedlots. So they're making the meat also. There are only 4 firms now, soon to be 3, processing 83 or 84% of all the beef in this country. So you have a very small number of companies controlling the industrial food chain from seed to plate.
In every commodity, whether it be corn, soybeans, milk, pork, or beef, we are almost entirely captive in the marketplace. You know, you can take your soybeans, for instance, to anywhere that you want to, as long as it's ADM, for instance. You know, you can take your milk to any place as long as it's Dairy Farmers of America. And when you have only one choice, you have no choice.
If this company that we grow broilers for decided to pull out of this area, then we would be hurt because we've got these chicken houses, we would have nothing there.
They provide the chicken and the feed. Our job is to provide the buildings, the equipment. We provide the water and electricity and the labor, and dependent upon the weight of your chicken and how much feed it took to get them to the 4 pounds, and that's how we get compensated.
So we're dependent, you might say, on the company itself. So when I just signed a 7-year contract with these at a certain rate of pay, I had to sign it for 7 years because that was my only option. If I did not sign it, then I would not get chickens tomorrow. They would not place chickens. This company would not place chickens.
During the past 25 to 30 years, big industry have basically mandated that if you want to be a part of our system, you must raise it this way, you must put up buildings this way, you must use our inputs, you must market through our system.
There is a very hard-headed, practical, national security, public health argument for decentralizing the food system. The more species there are in a field, the less vulnerable it is to shocks, whether they be weather or disease or whatever they are. That is true with the food system too. If you have many different ways of feeding yourself, if any one of those ways fails, if the oil runs out, if the corn crop fails, and you have organic or you have local, less people are going to suffer. If you have an epidemic of E. coli in the fresh produce, but you also have local, it's not going to sicken everybody.
If there is really only one place to get your food, or very few farmers to produce your food, you are very vulnerable. The number of farmers in America has dwindled, and our food supply increasingly is going overseas.
The last 15 years, we've lost about a third of our beekeepers due to honey being so cheap and everything else you're buying is so high. It just costs too much. I mean, you can buy a honey crop from some foreign country cheaper than we can raise it. You can't compete with them anymore. I do know that they had a problem with chemicals a couple of years ago with Chinese honey, and they banned it from America for a while. We don't use any chemicals in our hives at all.
I ate a Kentucky Fried Chicken last night, and they get that little package of honey sauce. Boy, if that ain't a rip-off. Honey, you can read honey, but the sauce is blended in with other colors, and all it is corn syrup. It finally says corn syrup. Kentucky Fried Chicken sure misleads you on that.
I guess it was God sent, because Diane came in here. She was wanting to buy honey. Of course, we was looking for a place where we can sell it. She's into a little everything. Diane and them, they're raising and processing their own meat. She's got some Amish people that's raising fresh eggs, and they got people that's making cheese. And of course the honey and anything that comes along that sounds good.
We had farmers calling up and saying, we're trying to get into the supermarket. We cannot get into the supermarkets. Could you help us? And so we came up with Good Natured Family Farms. And the name kind of originated because we feel good about how we raise our animals. We feel good about the food that we bring to the consumer. And we think that consumers should feel good about about what they eat, what they put in their body, and how they feed their families. Good Natured Family Farms is an alliance of 75 family farms surrounding the Kansas City metro area. We sell locally owned, locally operated, independent supermarkets.
Good Natured Family Farms honey. The one and only from local bees and flowers. And it's good too. True, true, true. That's called facing. Too deep. How are you? Oh, I broke my foot, man.
Oh, bummer.
Terrible, terrible dry. Percy, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. How are you?
How about that Good Natured Family Farm cheese?
You want some of that?
Local artisan cheese, Good Natured Family Farms. Vince, how are you, buddy? All natural, Good Natured Family Farms, Black Angus. So to Vince, #1 meat man in Kansas City. What have you been up to?
Just working.
Yeah?
Balls bought a little over $100,000 worth last year, 12 months time. They're good people to deal with, they pay good. They're really, really fine people. Of course, they just started out. I think Balls is about like our honey house. I think Fred Ball's dad, I'm sure he was, had one little old store in Kansas City in the early 1900s. And, now they've got, I think, 34 of them, and they keep it growing. So, he knows what it's like to be little, because they started off that way.
When we started a relationship with Diane Endicott 5 years ago, she had brought this concept of putting together a cooperative of different farmers. And we pretty much, on a handshake, tell them we're going to take everything that they grow. And so, being a small family-owned company, we're able to do that. We see it as really good for our customers because we're giving them the best possible products available on the face of the earth. How you doing, buddy? This guy right here is a perfect example. He is actually 95 years old, but he consumes Good Natured Family Farm products, and look how healthy he looks for a 95-year-old. Huh? Oh, I broke my foot.
These
man.
independent supermarkets, they are up against the same thing that the small family farms are. Because every time a Walmart comes in to a rural area, that local grocery store usually goes.
Okay.
consolidation is growing at such a rate, not just in the food industry, but in all industries, that probably the first and foremost thing that I truly believe that we're trying to sustain is consumer choice. We should have a choice in where our food comes from. If we just had every person that shops at Hen House, if they would just spend $10 a week, I mean, that would be such a small percentage of their overall food sales, but it would make such a huge statement and a huge economic impact, you know, not only on the small family farms, but to the economy, because the amount of money generated by that would be tripled or quadrupled by what it would bring back to our local economies in our rural areas, which are dying.
One of the fundamental reasons for shifting to the industrial system was that we could produce more with fewer people employed. This issue always comes up with respect to large-scale confinement animal feeding operations, whether it's hogs or chickens or whatever. Whenever you go to that kind of a system, you invariably displace more independent family farmers than the people that you employ. One reason the food is cheap in the supermarket is because people are exploited in the process of producing it. Part-time jobs, no benefits, low pay.
I guess the hardest part I would think of this job would be the actual processing of the chickens, and it does not smell good, does not look good, and it's not a place where I would want to work. I really prefer providing the product. Yes, in our area they cannot run 3 shifts. They can only run 2 because they can't get enough people to work the 3rd shift to have a full 3rd shift.
Just to give an example about the employment problem is that a lot of the people that catch the chickens are prisoners from the local prisons. The manager of the catch team is an employee of the company. And then most of the rest of them are trustees from the local prison. They bring them in because they cannot get the local people to do it.
If we go to a local food system, you gain about 3 people in terms of employment within the local community. For every person you displace, you see more people employed in a sustainable system, because it basically is more dependent upon the imagination and creativity of people. That's what makes these alternative systems work.
I told them that I thought that was a great idea, that we talked to them, and in the end they're going to funnel a lot of business our way. So we came together, independent pork producers in Missouri, and said we've got to find a model that ensures us a market. And so we developed Ozark Mountain Pork Cooperative. I want to show you these thick chops here. This is Berkshire breed, and so you have a lot better quality. There's marbling in there, and so these are just good, juicy chops processed naturally in our plant down in Mountain View, Missouri. A plant that's owned by the farmers. People say, man, your pork chops are the best pork chops I've ever eaten in my life, and so that makes us proud. But again, we're proud of our workers' craftsmanship, and they're proud of what they do down there. And they're happy. They get full health benefits. Oh. They're making, on the average of $14, $15 an hour compared to $6.5. So we have a stack of applications down there about that thick with people wanting to work there, which is just tremendous. So this is equitable food. It's good price for farmers, good price for workers, and good for the environment, good for the community. And so, you want to talk about excitement. I've been a family farmer ever since I was 5 years old, and and been through a lot of struggles. And this is all I've ever wanted to do. But you talk about the greatest opportunities, in my lifetime. It's right now, because I know the consumer. That's what the consumer wants. They want my pigs. They want to know that they got a guy out here that raises them this way and that cares about his community and things around him. They want my product. I've got to figure out a way to bring our farmers together so that we can provide that product to them.
every decision we make at the supermarket, what we grow, what we eat, is creating a different future for the land, for farmers, for the diversity of our crops. For the health of our own bodies and our communities. And that's what you're saying with the organic movement and the local movement and all these extraordinary things that are happening. And we're voting with our dollar. That's what's so empowering about the food issue. That's the one place that there is a new vision of the future that we don't have to wait for. But it's a decision you and I can make tomorrow, right now, that will change the world.
It's not an impossible dream out here. I can remember when the first supermarket came in. This Piggly Wiggly store. Those changes have come in my adult lifetime, from that system where it wasn't a supermarket to now where it's all supermarkets. And just as significant a changes can come in the next 50 years. We can transform the whole food system. It just happens one person at a time, one farmer, one consumer at a time.
Can you do this? Can you do it?
Hell yeah.
I try to get hold of you. You sure?
Yes. Along with my husband, yes.
Yes. We will not move from this spot until every one of you tell me you could go home and do this. What's going in next?
Food is at the foundation, but it's really about life.
I'm from Chicago, Illinois. We have a farm. I look like a thug. I get the whole thug thing. So when they see me, they like, you? For real? You? I look at you as being on the corner or something, you know? But no, you know. I feel I'm helping making the world a better place. You know, even if don't nobody else see it that way, I see it that way because somebody's gonna eat what I grow.
You know, I was talking with people in Detroit about gardening, and they said, we'd like to garden. I said, well, come on, I got a couple hundred acres. If you're for real, let's go.
I own a coffee company. We produce 60 tons of coffee grounds a year in our 5 cafes. So we were looking to set up a way to compost our coffee grounds and then sell the compost and use the profits to create neighborhood gardens in Louisville and neighborhoods where they need access to plentiful fresh food.
We share about half acre, and we're gonna do it for vegetable this year, just like for our families this year. And even, I mean, if we got like more stuff for sale, we were gonna go ahead and sell it.
We come here every Saturday. It's a regular destination for us. We know we believe in small farmers, and we believe in really good, fresh-tasting food, and you really can taste the difference. So, you know, we do everything that we could buy here, we do.
You know, I'm a teenager or whatever, so people look at me like, you work at a farm? They're like, what's that? Why you do that? You know, you should be working some other place, you know, not getting dirty and stuff like that, but this is my job. This is what I love doing.
Where I work, we get a half hour for lunch, and I was bringing my lunch of all of these vegetables and really good things. They were all like, what are you eating? What are you eating? So now I have this whole gathering of converts that are eating healthy.
This is a social justice movement as much as it is an environmental movement or an energy crisis movement as it is anything else. This is really about how people live, how we treat each other, how we take care of each other. Food is a human right. There's no reason why people shouldn't have food to eat and they shouldn't have healthy food to eat.